The monitoring station at Kethavar Sink logged Tomas Vael's emergency beacon going dark at 04:17 on the first morning. Senior naturalist Deathworld Vael had seen that happen before. Survey teams lost a beacon to moisture intrusion, to impact fracture, to simple bad luck with condensation working into a housing seal. It was not in itself a crisis. The Kethavar Sink was classified Class 16, a dense equatorial canopy world of layered predator pressure and perpetual heat fog, but the survey consortium ran its teams with adequate redundancy. If the beacon failed, the technician triggered their secondary locator. If the secondary failed, they sheltered in place and waited for the extraction sweep that ran every 72 hours. Deathworld pulled the beacon file, noted the failure at 04:17, and waited for the secondary locator ping. It never came. The 72-hour sweep found Vael's base camp exactly where it was supposed to be. Tent frame collapsed inward by something large, supply crate cracked open and emptied, secondary locator unit smashed to fragments on the ground beside it. The crate hasp was bent outward, not inward. Whatever had taken the food supply had done it from the outside, applying enough lateral force to tear the hasp clean off its mounting. Deathworld's recorder clicked softly as he annotated the footage. The V7 canopy predators, four-limbed, mottled gray-green scaled, ambush hunters the size of a ground transport, were known to investigate survey camps during the low-light pre-dawn hours. One of them had come through, taken the ration packs, destroyed the locator unit in the process, and left. Tomas Vael had either fled into the canopy or been taken. There was no blood at the site, no drag marks, no sign of a struggle at the tent itself. Deathworld recorded his assessment. The technician had fled. He updated the file to active search, dispatched a second sweep team, and privately estimated a survival window of 48 hours. The Kethavar Sink was not a place that rewarded flight. Its canopy floor ran at 92% humidity, sustained temperatures above 40 degrees, hosted 17 documented predator species and an estimated 31 undocumented ones, and had a ground-level visibility ceiling of roughly 4 meters through the undergrowth. A human who ran from a V7 at 04:00 in a Class 16 jungle without gear, without beacon, without locator, that human was already as good as a record entry. He gave it 48 hours. He was being generous. Tomas Vael had not been taken. He had heard the V's arrive, had woken to the sound of the crate hasp bending, lay absolutely still inside the tent for 11 minutes while the predator investigated the camp, and had been 20 meters up a canopy tree by the time it decided the tent was not worth the investigation. He had not come down until full light. By then the V7 had gone. So had everything else. He inventoried from his position in the branches. Tent collapsed, supply crate emptied, locator unit visible in fragments from 20 meters up. He could see the circuit board spilled across the ground cover. Secondary beacon gone with the crate. His survey vest was still on his body because he slept in it. It contained a handheld spectral scanner with 14 hours of battery remaining, a folded mylar thermal sheet, a water filtration straw, a 3-centimeter utility blade, and 4 energy tabs, the kind that tasted like compressed chalk and delivered about 800 calories each. The extraction sweep ran every 72 hours. He was approximately 6 hours into a 72-hour window. He needed to stay alive for 66 hours, at which point the sweep team would return to this site. He climbed back down, examined the V7's tracks, noted the direction it had left, and moved 60 meters perpendicular to that direction before making camp in a dense cluster of ground palms whose overlapping fronds would break thermal signature. He spent the remainder of the morning constructing a signal marker out of the broken crate housing, stripped mylar lining folded into a reflective panel, braced against the north-facing trunk of the largest tree he could find, angled to catch the high-period sun. If the sweep team came back visually, it would flash. Then he ate one energy tab and drank through the filtration straw from the nearest pooled runoff and settled in to wait. The Kethavar Sink did not let him wait. The second night, something moved through his ground palm camp that was not a V7. Smaller. Fast. It investigated the mylar panel and knocked it over, and the sound woke Tomas in time to watch 4 sets of pale bioluminescent eyes circle the base of his tree. He could not identify the species from the movement pattern. He stayed in the tree until the eyes were gone, then climbed higher and rigged the thermal sheet across 2 branches as a sleeping platform. It was cramped, and the mylar crinkled every time he shifted his weight, and he did not sleep again until dawn. On the 3rd morning, his spectral scanner registered an unidentified chemical trace in the air, the kind of diffuse output that typically indicated a large organism's territorial marking. It was coming from the north. It was also coming, with slightly lower concentration, from the east. His camp sat between 2 territorial markers, which meant he was in a transition zone, which meant anything that moved through here was likely doing so, because it was also transiting between territories and not inclined to linger. He noted this in the scanner's text log, then spent 2 hours mapping the gradient by walking slow arcs and taking readings, building a rough picture of the territorial boundary. When he had it, he moved his camp to the narrowest point of the transition corridor, where the markers were weakest, and rebuilt his reflective signal array against a taller tree. Kethavar, reviewing the sweep team's footage from the return pass on day 3, noted the reflective panel with mild surprise. It was too deliberate for accident mylar thermal sheet, correctly angled, obviously placed. He updated the file. The human was alive on day 3 at least, still almost certainly doomed but alive. He authorized another sweep, this one with a broader pattern. The broader sweep found nothing. The Kethavar Sink absorbed it. On day 4, Tomas's filtration straw began to fail. The membrane was not designed for the particulate load of Class 16 canopy runoff. Too much organic matter, too much microbial density, too much dissolved mineral from the canopy itself. He noticed it first as a slowing of flow, then as a change in the taste of the water. He did not risk another draw through the compromised membrane. Instead, he spent the afternoon rigging a pre-filter from layers of canopy moss packed between 2 sections of broken crate housing, forcing the runoff through the moss bed before it reached the straw. It was slow. It was not perfect. It was good enough, and he knew the difference between good enough and not, which was the only measurement that mattered. The V7 came back on day 5. Not the same individual, Tomas could tell from the track depth and the width of the pad impressions. Larger animal, heavier. It came from the south and circled his camp at roughly 15 meters, which meant it had scented him but not yet located him precisely. He was 6 meters up, motionless, watching through a gap in the fronds. The V7 moved with the particular slow deliberateness of an apex predator that was not in a hurry, its scaled head swinging left and right, processing air with its lateral chemoreceptors. Tomas had spent the morning reading the V7 field notes from his scanner's cached survey database, 6 hours of battery left by this point, and he had decided the information was worth the expenditure. He knew the species hunted primarily by movement detection at close range, supplemented by chemical tracking, with relatively poor thermal discrimination in the high-humidity environment because the background temperature differential was too narrow to be reliable. He knew they were ambush hunters that committed to a strike rather than running down prey. He knew they abandoned a hunt if the target remained still for longer than approximately 4 minutes, because anything that still was either already dead or not worth the risk of venomous spine injury from certain competing prey species. He was still for 6 minutes. The V7 circled once more, slower. Then it moved on to the south. Tomas waited another 10 minutes before he moved. He spent day 6 building a direction indicator. This was not a small project. He had no compass, no orientation tools beyond the spectral scanner, and with only 2 hours of battery left, he was not willing to expend it on navigation functions. Instead, he tracked shadow movement across a clear patch of canopy floor over the course of 3 hours, marking the shadow's progression with cut stems pressed into the ground. By mid-afternoon, he had a rough east-west line, and by extrapolation a north-south axis. He knew from the survey brief that the nearest ridge line, the only terrain feature that would give him elevation, visibility, and a sightline to the monitoring station's signal mast, lay approximately 11 kilometers to the northwest. 11 kilometers in Class 16 jungle without trail, with 2 hours of scanner battery, with a compromised water filter and 2 energy tabs remaining, was not a trivial distance. He was aware of that. He allocated it carefully. 4 kilometers on day 6, 4 on day 7, 3 on day 8, the last being intentionally short because he would need energy at the end, not at the start of the final push. He did not move in a straight line. He read the canopy pressure, the density of undergrowth, the predator sign, the territorial chemical traces, and found the paths of least resistance, which were never the shortest distance but were consistently faster than forcing through primary vegetation. He moved in the early morning and mid-afternoon, resting through the hottest hours and through the low-light windows when V7 activity peaked. He ate on a strict schedule, half a tab per day, rationed against the distance remaining. Kethavar reviewed the Day 7 sweep footage and found something that genuinely stopped his annotation work. The second reflective panel, a larger one, this time constructed from the full surface area of the thermal sheet plus fragments of the spectral scanner's casing, apparently disassembled and stripped for reflective material, had been erected approximately 7 kilometers northwest of the original camp. It was precisely angled, weighted at the base with stones, braced with a frame of cut canopy branches lashed together with what appeared to be strips of the mylar's own bonding edge. The human had moved 7 kilometers through primary Class 16 canopy in 6 days, without trail, without navigation tools, without a guide. Kethavar sat back in his chair. He was Kethavar, green-scaled, a senior naturalist with 22 years of canopy survey work. He had filed 3 separate incident reports on survey technicians lost in Class 16 sectors. None of them had lived past day 4. The Kethavar Sink did not yield its interior. It was not the kind of classification that offered second attempts. He filed an urgent extraction dispatch and authorized a ground team, which he had not done before. Ground teams in Class 16 were expensive, dangerous, and almost never justified because they were almost always recovering a body. He authorized it anyway. On day 8, Tomas Vael walked out of the tree line onto the ridge northwest of the Kethavar Sink at 11:23 in the morning. He was filthy. Canopy moisture had saturated every layer of his clothing. The survey vest was half stripped of its casing material where he had harvested the reflective panels, and a shallow chemical scrape from a territorial brush plant along his left forearm had raised a welt that had been weeping for 2 days. He was carrying the spectral scanner, now dead, and the utility blade, and the empty filtration straw housing, and nothing else. He walked at a steady pace, not a stagger, a walk. The extraction ground team found him 400 meters from the ridgeline and reported his condition as ambulatory, oriented, no systemic symptoms, requesting water and a direct line to the consortium's incident coordinator. The medical tech on the team took his vitals, looked at the numbers and looked at them again. Heart rate 61, blood pressure within normal range, core temperature elevated by 0.8 degrees, consistent with sustained exertion in a high-heat environment. No signs of acute dehydration, no neurological flags. The medical tech reported this to Kethavar's station by comm. There was a pause on the line. 8 days, Kethavar said. Correct, the tech said. He says he would like to file a field observation report. He made notes in the scanner log and wants to preserve them before the battery state degrades the memory cells. Another pause. He made field observation notes. Yes. He says the territorial boundary mapping between the northern V's 7 range and the eastern V's 7 range is incomplete in the existing survey database, and he has additional data points that he thinks would improve the accuracy. Kethavar looked at his own survey notes on the Kethavar Sink. 22 years, 17 documented predator species, a file of incident reports on technicians who had not come back. He thought about the second reflective panel, precisely angled, weighted with stones, braced with a cut branch frame. He thought about the territorial boundary data, cross-referenced movement arcs, chemical gradient readings taken by walking slow arcs through a Class 16 canopy interior. He pulled the technician's personnel file. Tomas Vael, 21 years old. Survey technician, 18 months in service. Earth origin. Class 15 Deathworld accreditation in his certification record, which Kethavar had noted when the team was assigned and had not thought much about, because Class 15 Deathworld accreditation was not uncommon among survey personnel, and the Kethavar Sink was Class 16, a full tier above. He had been wrong about that, apparently. He opened a fresh annotation on the incident file and sat for a long moment without typing. Then he wrote, Field Technician Tomas Vael, Earth Origin, traversed 11.2 kilometers of Class 16 primary canopy interior on zero navigation equipment, improvised water filtration from available materials, avoided 2 separate V7 encounters using documented behavioral data, maintained physiological stability across 8 days of Class 16 exposure, and arrived at the Extraction Ridge Ambulatory and requesting to submit field data. He paused. No assessment of this outcome exists in the current incident response framework. The Kethavar Sink classification will require review. He saved the file, leaned back in his chair, and stared at the monitoring screen showing the ridgeline feed. The extraction team was walking Tomas Vael to the transport now, and the young man was talking to the medical tech as he walked, calm, unhurried, apparently explaining something about the moss pre-filter he had constructed for the water straw, and whether the consortium's field kit design team would be interested in a simplified version for standard survey packs. Kethavar watched him until the feed cut out, then sat quietly for a while. Outside the monitoring station, the Kethavar Sink continued exactly as it always had, layered, hot, deep, and patient, the way a place that had never been survived from the inside had every right to be. It had not encountered a Deathworlder before. It would need time to adjust.